The year I graduated from high school, my dad brought home a woman and a child with a rose on my mom's birthday. When the child offered my mom the rose, my mom gladly accepted it, only to end her life after spending her 39th birthday. When I got married, I told my husband, Alistair Yates, that a rose was enough to end our marriage if he wanted a divorce. Then, he tried to reassure me that our house would not have anything related to roses. 5 years later, during one of the Yates Group's tender, one of our partners had a rose pinned to her chest. When he saw this, Alistair immediately kicked her out of the company and blacklisted her. That day, I realized that marriage could actually be blissful. Yet, 6 months after that, I completed my new drug research. The entire corridor was full of roses when I came out of the lab. The person who had been kicked out of the company? She was standing beside Alistair with a bright smile. I looked at him coldly, but he casually said, "Maria prepared all these for you. She's your sister and she wants to make amends with you." It took me 2 seconds to stare at Alistair before I turned to leave. What sister? I never had one. And from today, I no longer need a husband. I zoned out in front of my mother's tombstone for 3 hours. Today was her birthday, and also the 10th anniversary of her death. Red roses were the symbol of my parents' love. Yet 10 years ago today, my father watched with his own eyes as Maria Granger handed a red rose to my mother, an act that shattered her spirit completely. Red roses became my taboo. And 10 years later, on this very day, my husband brought the woman who caused my mother's death, carrying those same red roses, and dealt me a fatal blow. Fireworks bloomed in the distance like a rain of light. That was Alistair Yates' celebration banquet, held to mark the successful development of a new drug. I had led the research team, 6 months of relentless effort and 180 days of sleepless nights, yet at this moment, it all felt like Maria's victory proclamation. After saying goodbye to my mother, I stood up and left. That was when Alistair's call came through. On the phone, the man's voice was thick with alcohol. "The celebration's almost over. You're the head of R&D, how can you not be here?" I stayed silent. In the past, I would have instinctively acted coy, but tonight, I didn't know what to say to him. His voice rose sharply. "Winnie, I'm talking to you. Where did you run off to?" "The cemetery." He fell silent, as if he had finally remembered that today was the anniversary of my mother's death. As if he had finally recalled that, for the sake of this new drug, I had given up celebrating my own birthday, cancelled our wedding anniversary dinner. My only request was for him to accompany me to see my mother. Silence passed before he spoke with difficulty. I was too happy today. I forgot. Wait for me at the cemetery." I hung up and turned to leave. Yet, when I reached the parking lot, I received his message. "Winnie, it's too late tonight. Next time. Maria's drunk. I need to take her home first. Don't worry. I'll make it up to you." I wasn't surprised at all. With Maria's scheming nature, she was bound to cling to Alistair tonight. I could see through her tricks. A man seasoned in the business world like him could see through them too, but he didn't care because he enjoyed it and never cared about how I felt. It was fine, though. From now on, I won't care about him either. That night, Alistair did not come home. He didn't send a single message or make a single call. I didn't chase him, and I didn't ask. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. Alistair was the CEO, while I was the head of R&D. In 5 years, our company had grown from a garage startup to an office in the heart of the CBD, yet our relationship had drifted farther and farther apart. The first phase of the new drugs development was complete, so work was relatively light for now. Holding my coffee, I opened the divorce agreement my lawyer had sent, just as Alistair walked into my office. "Maria twisted her ankle getting out of the car last night," he said. I stayed with her a little longer. By the time we were done, it was too late, so I just found a nearby hotel to stay the night. I nodded, my eyes still on the divorce papers, and replied casually, "I know." After all, we were about to get divorced. Who he slept with, or where, was none of my business. There was no need for him to report it to me. Alistair froze. He seemed like he wanted to say something, but held it back. "How about dinner tonight?" he suggested instead. "The new drug was a success, you're the biggest contributor. We should celebrate." He paused, glanced at me, then added, "Should we invite Maria too? I think you should talk to her. After all, when your mother passed away, she was just a child." My hand paused slightly. Listening to him excuse and whitewash Maria, I suddenly wanted to ask him that, when my mother took her own life, wasn't I just a child too? I swallowed the anger rising in my chest, took a sip of coffee, and replied softly, "My affairs don't concern you. Tonight, let's keep it just the two of us. We were going to talk about divorce. Having outsiders around wouldn't be appropriate. As for a younger sister? My mother had only one daughter, me. Where would a sister come from? Alistair looked at me, clearly mistaking my words for jealousy. A smile curved his lips as he was about to speak, when the ringing of his phone cut him off. At the sight of the name Maria on the screen, his expression softened. Without another word, he answered the call and hurried out of my office. Near the end of the workday, I received a message from him, a reservation confirmation at a private restaurant. I knew this was his way of compensating me. I slipped the printed divorce agreement into my bag and prepared to go. As I left the building, Alistair's car passed by. He lowered the window, saying, "Go home and freshen up first. I need to meet a client, I'll be there soon." Before he even finished speaking, the car had already driven off. In the past, whenever I went on a date with him, I would spend 2 full hours getting ready. Choosing clothes and doing makeup, things I wasn't good at, always left me exhausted but oddly happy. This time, there was no need. I found a massage parlor nearby and loosened up my stiff muscles, finally giving my body, worn down by endless late nights, a proper break. When I arrived at the restaurant, he still hadn't shown up. I sent him a message. No reply. I shook my head. Unlike before, I didn't wait for him and ordered food on my own. The private restaurant had a lovely atmosphere, and the food tasted excellent, far better than eating boxed lunches at the office. So, even when Alistair never came, I wasn't angry. After all, he had already betrayed our 7-year relationship. Why would one more broken promise matter? What he didn't know was this: his signature on the divorce papers would be the greatest compensation he could ever give me. After dinner, I walked home slowly. Years of non-stop work had left me feeling cut off from the world. The warmth and noise of the streets, everyday life unfolding around me, made me feel alive again. Suddenly, when I reached a familiar street, I stopped in my tracks. Chapter 3: He brings her home. Only then did I realize that the garage Alistair and I had rented when we first started our business had long since been demolished. And the stall we used to visit every day just to save $1 had already turned into a bakery. That was when I finally understood, things change, and so do people. Even the beautiful memories I once cherished had been erased by time. My phone rang. It was my mentor. There was a hint of hesitation in her voice as she began, "Winnie, your application to join the 707 confidential research project was approved yesterday. I need to confirm this one last time. Have you truly thought this through? This mission will take at least 5 years. Without you, the company you and your husband built could easily collapse. Will your husband agree?" I stepped forward, leaving that familiar street behind, and answered firmly, "I'm getting a divorce." Because the classified project was about to begin, and because I wanted to leave as soon as possible, I arranged for my mentor to send someone to pick me up the very next day. With no mood left for wandering, I took a cab straight home. The living room lights were on. Alistair was sitting on the couch, texting. The moment he saw me, the crease in his brow smoothed out. He rushed over, grabbed my hand, and demanded, "Why didn't you wait for me at the restaurant? When I got there, and you were gone, do you have any idea how awkward that was for me?" I froze for a moment. I hadn't expected him to actually show up in the end, but seeing how confidently he questioned me, I couldn't help but find it ridiculous. Then again, it made sense. He was used to me waiting right where he left me. I pulled my hand free. I was full. Why would I stay? Perhaps realizing he was indeed in the wrong, he suppressed his irritation and handed me a gift box. "I bought this especially for you today. Open it and take a look." I wasn't surprised. After standing me up so many times, some compensation was expected. That was Alistair. Every time he messed up, he would toss me a little sweetness afterward. And I would always wait anxiously, hoping the compensation would be a little more, hoping he would spend just a little more time with me. I took the gift box and casually tossed it onto the couch. "You're too kind," I said politely. The smile on his face froze. For the first time, he noticed my indifference. A flicker of panic crossed his eyes as he reached for my hand again. Just then, Maria's voice floated down from the second floor. "Alistair, maybe I should go home first. If Winnie comes back and misunderstands, that would be troublesome." When she came down the stairs and saw me, Maria hid the triumph in her eyes, covering her mouth as she put on a look of surprise. Alistair hurried to explain, "Maria twisted her ankle yesterday. I took her for a follow-up check today, that's why I was late. She can't move around easily right now, so I let her stay in the guest room for the night." After speaking, he stared at me intently, as if afraid I might get angry. I nodded and replied indifferently, "Then, I'll stay at a hotel. I won't live under the same roof as her." Alistair was stunned. He clearly hadn't expected that reaction. If you really don't like Maria staying here, I can send her. Before he could finish, Maria suddenly tumbled down the stairs, clutching her foot as she began to sob softly. He turned pale, quickly lifting her up and carrying her back into the room to massage her ankle. When I pulled my suitcase toward the door, ready to leave, he returned to the living room. He pressed his lips together and gripped my hand tightly, refusing to let go. Chapter 4. She inches in. The guilt in his eyes deepened and deepened. At last, urged on by Maria's soft reminders, Alistair responded, "We'll visit your mom tomorrow. Then, we'll straighten things out in front of her." I turned away without a change of expression. Straighten things out, he said? Well, he could deal with my lawyer instead. The moment Maria appeared in that house, I no longer had any interest in discussing divorce with him at all. Early the next morning, the people my mentor had sent to pick me up arrived ahead of schedule. Before leaving, however, I still needed to go to the company to retrieve a photo of my mother and me. I wouldn't let that photo fall into Maria's hands. The moment I stepped into the workplace, my colleagues looked at me strangely. By the time I reached my own office, I understood the source of the uneasy atmosphere. Maria was sitting inside my office, staring at me with a provocative smile. "Winnie," she said, "it looks like we'll be working at the same company from now on." When I didn't respond, her expression grew even more smug. "Dad invested in this company. From now on, our family will be a major shareholder of Yates Group. I'll be the vice president. And you will be reporting to me." I narrowed my eyes. Invested? With the Granger family's assets, becoming a major shareholder of the Yates Group shouldn't be possible. Maria let out a snort of laughter. "That's none of your concern. We have our own channels. I like this office, so I'm taking it. From now on, you'll report to me here." I looked at her and smiled faintly. "Seems you and your mother really have a knack for eyeing other people's items. Honestly, you're not as smart as she is. At least she knows how to endure." With that, I picked up my mother's photo and turned to leave. Just as I reached the door, Alistair appeared. At the sight of the photo in my hands, his expression tightened. "Where are you going?" Before I could finish, Maria cut in, "She's clearing out the office for me. I like this one." When Alistair saw me about to leave, he hurried forward and grabbed my arm. "No. This office has always been yours. No one else can." I cut him off before he could finish. "Since she likes it, let her have it." After all, I had already submitted my resignation letter. Once he approved it, I would be gone. His approval didn't even matter. It was only a notice, just like how he hadn't bothered to notify me before letting Maria into the company. Alistair froze, his expression unreadable. Only after my figure disappeared down the hallway did he come back to his senses. He shoved Maria, who was humming as she packed up the office, out into the corridor, then, in front of everyone, slapped her hard across the face. "Didn't I warn you? You're here to cooperate with Winnie's work, to serve her. She's the head of R&D. The future development of the new drug depends entirely on her. Who gave you the illusion that you could bare your teeth at her like that?" Downstairs, my phone buzzed with a message from Alistair. "If you don't like Maria, I'll have her leave the company. Your favorite classical orchestra is performing tonight. I got 2 front row tickets. We'll visit your mother first, then spend some time alone together. I'll be waiting for you at the cemetery at 5 p.m. Don't be late." I shook my head, pulled out the SIM card, snapped it in half, and tossed it into the trash. I felt disgusted by his messages. I got into the car sent to pick me up and headed straight for the airport. The plane ascended, piercing through the cloud layer. I watched the city shrink beneath me until the towering skyscrapers became nothing but toys. My phone, now just a useless brick without its SIM card, lay cold in my bag. I didn't look back. At 5 p.m., while Alistair stood at the cemetery entrance clutching a bouquet of white lilies, ironically appropriate for a funeral of a marriage, I was landing at a military-grade airfield thousands of miles away. My mentor, Dr. Eleanor Vance, was waiting. Her hair had grayed since I last saw her, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Winnie," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of antiseptic and old books. "Welcome to the shadows." "I'm ready," I said, my voice steady. "Good. Because once you enter the facility, you cease to exist. No calls. No internet. No contact with the outside world for 5 years. Are you sure?" I thought of Alistair's face when he slapped Maria. Not out of loyalty to me, but out of fear for his company's profits. I thought of the rose pinned to Maria's chest. I've never been more sure. I handed over my personal belongings. In exchange, I received a white lab coat and a secure ID badge. The doors hissed shut behind me. Meanwhile, back in the city I left, chaos was beginning to brew. Alistair checked his watch for the 50th time. 5:45 p.m. Where is she? He muttered, pacing back and forth. The autumn wind was biting, and the lilies were starting to wilt. He tried calling my number again. The number you have dialed is not in service. A flicker of unease ignited in his chest. Winnie was never late. In 7 years, she had never missed a date, never kept him waiting. She was the constant in his chaotic life, the lighthouse he always returned to. He drove to our house. It was dark. He used his key. The living room was empty. The gift box he had given me yesterday, a diamond necklace he bought guiltily after spending the night with Maria, was still on the couch, unopened. He ran upstairs. The closet was half empty. My toiletries were gone. On the bedside table, a single envelope lay white against the dark wood. He tore it open. Inside was the divorce agreement, signed in my neat, firm handwriting. And beside it, my resignation letter. Alistair Yates collapsed onto the bed, the papers crinkling under his weight. Winnie, he whispered to the empty room. This isn't funny. 1 month later. The Yates Group was in turmoil. The new drug, ether, which I had developed, was in its critical second phase of clinical trials. But without my leadership, the data analysis was stalling. The team was headless. Maria, the self-proclaimed vice president, walked into the lab wearing high heels and a skirt too short for a sterile environment. Why is the progress report late? She demanded, snapping her fingers at my former assistant, Sarah. Sarah, a brilliant chemist who had stayed only out of loyalty to me, looked at Maria with barely concealed contempt. Because the data is complex, Ms. Granger. And we don't have Dr. Winnie to interpret the anomalies. Then figure it out. Maria shrieked. I'm paying you to work, not to make excuses. Sarah took off her goggles. Actually, you're not paying me enough to deal with this. I quit. You can't quit. Watch me. Sarah walked out. 3 other senior researchers followed her. By the end of the week, the R&D department was a skeleton crew. Alistair was frantic. He hired headhunters, offered triple salaries, tried to poach experts from competitors. But in our field, reputation is everything. And everyone knew that the soul of Yates Group, Winnie, had vanished, leaving behind a mess managed by a nepotism hire. He tried to find me. He hired private investigators. They traced my car to the airport, but the trail went cold there. The passenger manifest for the military transport was classified. He went to the police. My wife is missing. Sir, she left a divorce note and resigned, the officer said, bored. That's not a missing person. That's a woman who left you. Alistair grew haggard. He drank more. He shouted at Maria more. You drove her away, he roared one night in the office, throwing a file at Maria. If you hadn't provoked her. Me? Maria cried, crocodile tears streaming down her face. I just wanted to help. She was jealous, Alistair. She couldn't handle that you cared about me. I don't care about you, he screamed. I cared about the promise I made to your mother. But you're useless. You know nothing about chemistry. Nothing about business. Maria's face hardened. The mask of the sweet, clumsy sister slipped. Careful, Alistair, she hissed. My father is the biggest shareholder now. You kick me out, you lose the funding. And without Winnie to fix the drug. Yates Group is dead. Alistair froze. He realized, with dawning horror, that he had let a viper into his bed, and she had swallowed the key. 5 years passed. Inside the facility, time moved differently. It was measured in failed experiments, breakthrough moments, and endless cups of black coffee. I didn't think about Alistair. I didn't let myself. I poured every ounce of my pain and brilliance into Project Phoenix, a revolutionary gene therapy for leukemia. I became tougher. Colder. The soft-spoken woman who waited for her husband at restaurants was gone. In her place was Dr. Winnie, a legend in the scientific community, known only by her code name, the Alchemist. Outside, the world changed. The Yates Group barely survived. The ether drug failed its phase 3 trials due to unforeseen side effects I would have caught if I had been there. The stock plummeted. Alistair managed to keep the company afloat by selling off assets, but he was a shell of his former self. He never signed the divorce papers. He kept my office exactly as I left it, dusting it himself every week. Maria and her father tightened their grip. They forced Alistair into unfavorable deals, slowly bleeding the company dry to feed their own ventures. Then, the 5 years were up. Project Phoenix was a success. The government declassified the project, and my team was released back into the world. I walked out of the facility on a crisp autumn morning. Dr. Vance was there to say goodbye. What will you do now? She asked. I have some unfinished business, I said, putting on sunglasses. I turned on my new phone. It flooded with notifications. 5 years of missed calls, emails, and texts. Thousands from Alistair. I ignored them all and dialed a number I had memorized. Sarah? It's Winnie. There was a gasp on the other end. Boss? Oh my God. You're alive. I'm back. And I'm starting a new company. Are you in? I'm in. The whole team is in. We've been waiting for you. I didn't announce my return. I let the news do it for me. Mysterious scientist, the alchemist reveals identity, Dr. Winnie returns with cure for leukemia. The headlines exploded. My face was on every magazine cover. Investors were lining up around the block to fund my new venture, Genesis Labs. I hosted a launch gala at the city's grandest hotel. Everyone who was anyone was there. Including Alistair. I saw him from the balcony. He looked older. Gray streaked his temples. He was thinner, his suit hanging slightly loose. He was scanning the crowd with desperate eyes. Maria was there too, clinging to his arm like a parasite. She wore a dress that was too flashy, diamonds that were too big. She looked nervous. I descended the staircase. The room went silent. I wore a deep red gown, the color of roses, but darker, like dried blood. Alistair saw me. He stopped breathing. He shoved Maria aside and stumbled toward the stairs. Winnie. His voice cracked. He looked like a man seeing a ghost. I stopped on the last step, looking down at him. Mr. Yates, I said coolly. Do you have an invitation? Winnie, it's me. It's Alistair. Please. He reached for my hand. I stepped back. I know who you are. My ex-husband. I never signed the papers, he cried. We're still married. A legality, I said. Easily fixed. My lawyers will be in touch tomorrow. Tonight is about the future. And you are the past. Maria marched up, her face red with indignation. Who do you think you are? You disappeared for 5 years. You abandoned the company. You owe us. I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. Oh, you? I built Yates Group. And when I left, it crumbled. That proves exactly who owed whom. I turned to the crowd, raising my glass. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Genesis Labs is not just a company. It is a promise. A promise that competence, not connections, rules the world. The applause was thunderous. Alistair stood there, tears streaming down his face. He realized then that the woman he had taken for granted, the woman he thought would always be there, had outgrown him in every possible way. Chapter 9, The Reckoning. The next day, the real war began. Genesis Labs didn't just launch a drug, we launched a hostile takeover of Yates Group. I knew the company's financials better than anyone. I knew where the bodies were buried. I knew Maria's father had been embezzling funds. I leaked the documents Sarah had quietly gathered over the years. The SEC investigation was swift and brutal. Yates Group stock crashed. Maria's father was arrested for fraud. Maria was implicated as an accomplice. Alistair came to my office. He bypassed the receptionist, bursting in. Winnie, please. Stop this. You're destroying everything we built. I sat behind my desk, typing. I didn't look up. Correction. You destroyed what we built when you let that woman and her father turn it into a piggy bank. I was weak, he confessed, falling to his knees. I was afraid of losing the funding. I was afraid of failing you. You failed me the moment you brought her roses, I said, finally looking at him. I can fix it, he begged. I'll fire her. I'll testify against her father. Just, give me another chance. I love you, Winnie. I never stopped. I stood up and walked around the desk. I stood in front of him. Do you know why I left, Alistair? It wasn't just Maria. It was you. Your cowardice. Your inability to draw a line. You let them hurt me because it was easier than fighting for me. I leaned down, whispering in his ear. I don't need your love. I need your company. And now, I have it. I pressed a button on my desk. Security entered. Escort Mr. Yates out. And make sure he takes his personal belongings. The building belongs to Genesis Labs now. Chapter 10, The Rose. Maria tried to flee the country, but her passport was flagged. She came to my house late one night, pounding on the door. It was raining. She was soaked, her makeup running, looking like a drowned rat. Winnie. Sister. Please. I opened the door. I held a cup of hot tea. I didn't offer her any. I'm not your sister, I said. My dad is going to jail. I have nothing. Alistair kicked me out. She fell onto the porch, sobbing. I just wanted what you had. You had everything. A handsome husband, a career. I was jealous. You wanted my life, I said. But you didn't want the work. You didn't want the sleepless nights in the lab. You just wanted the rose. I reached into the umbrella stand by the door and pulled out a single, dried red rose. It was the one Alistair had given me on our first anniversary. I had kept it for years, then left it behind when I fled. Alistair had tried to mail it to me, but it had returned to sender. I found it in his office during the takeover. Here, I said, tossing the brittle flower at her. You like roses so much? Take it. The petals shattered on the wet concrete. It's dead, Maria whispered. Exactly. I closed the door. Chapter 11, The Aftermath. Alistair lost the company. He lost his fortune paying legal fees and settlements. He ended up working as a consultant for a small pharmaceutical firm in another city. He lived in a small apartment. Every year, on my mother's birthday, he would go to the cemetery. He would stand there for hours, but he never brought flowers. He knew he didn't have the right. I visited the cemetery too, but always in the morning. One year, I found a letter on the tombstone. It was from Alistair. To the woman I loved, and the woman I failed. You taught me that a rose isn't just a flower. It's a promise. And promises broken can never be mended with glue. They can only be replaced by better, stronger things. You became steel. I remained glass. I shattered. You soared. I am sorry. I read it, then folded it and put it in my pocket. I didn't cry. I walked back to my car. A man was waiting for me. It wasn't Alistair. It was Dr. Julian Thorne, a brilliant neurologist I had met during the classified project. He was quiet, steady, and kind. He knew my history. He knew about the roses. He held a bouquet of sunflowers. Why sunflowers? I had asked him on our first date. Because they don't hide, he said. They always face the light. Like you. I smiled at him. Ready to go, he asked. Ready. We drove away, leaving the ghosts of the past in the graveyard where they belonged. Epilogue. Genesis Labs cured leukemia. Then we tackled Alzheimer's. I became a household name. Young girls wrote to me saying they wanted to be scientists. One day, I was giving a lecture at a university. A student raised her hand. Dr. Winnie, what is the most important lesson you've learned in your career? I looked out at the sea of eager faces. I thought about the lab. I thought about the betrayal. I thought about the long, dark years in the facility. The most important lesson, I said, my voice ringing clear, is that you must be willing to walk away from the table when respect is no longer being served. Your brilliance is not a bargaining chip. It is your weapon. Do not let anyone dull it. The students cheered. In the back of the auditorium, a man in a worn coat stood up and clapped slowly. It was Alistair. Our eyes met across the room. He nodded, a gesture of surrender and respect. I nodded back. Then I turned my back on him and continued my lecture. The past was a lesson. The future was mine. And I never bought a rose again. The end.